Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back. So, if you remember in this unit, we are learning the author's purpose or the reason why an author writes. So, if you remember our last lesson, we looked at why authors or how authors share information with us through informational text. So, one of the author's purposes could be to share information. Today, we're going to learn about another purpose as well. But let's review kind of what we already learned, and then we'll jump into our new learning. So the authors have a few main reasons or purposes for writing. That could be to share information with the reader. That could be to explain something to the reader by giving directions. We're going to learn more about that today. It could be to entertain the reader, or the last purpose we're going to look at is to persuade the reader. And we have already learned about how authors share information with readers. So that one has a big check mark because you've learned that, you practice that. You're probably experts at sharing information about knowing when the author is sharing information with you. I'm sure you're an expert. So today we are going to focus on authors who write to explain something to readers. So what does it mean to explain? If you explain something to your mom or dad or an adult at home, what does that mean? What does that look like? Or if you explain something to your teacher, what does that mean? What does that look like? Let's talk about it. Explains means to give someone steps or directions in order to complete a task. So when you explain something to someone, you're giving them steps or directions to complete a task. So your mom might explain to you how to make your bed because she expects you to take those steps or directions and make your bed. So sometimes authors write in order to explain or to tell us how to give us directions. Some examples are recipes. So you might have seen your parents or an adult at home following a recipe whenever they're cooking. That explains how to create that food. How-to books. I know that I've read some how-to books on how different things are made. I think that's really interesting when we look at how to make different things. Like I read one about how to make a baseball, so it explained to me exactly how baseballs were made. And I thought that was pretty cool. The last example that I have is directions. So when your parents give you directions and tell you what to do, they're explaining to you what they want done. Or if someone gives you directions about how to get somewhere, they're telling you exactly where to go to get to where you're going. So when an author explains, that's really important because remember, it tells you how to do something. Let's look at an example of maybe when an author is explaining something to the reader. All right, so here I have an example for you. Does anybody know what this is? So think for a second. What is this that I put on the screen? If you said that this was a recipe, you're exactly right. So in this recipe, we have our list of ingredients. We have things like butter, sugar, eggs, vanilla. So we have a bunch of different ingredients there in our recipe. And then right underneath the ingredients are the directions. So why do you think the author put the directions in this recipe? Let's talk about that for a second really quick. This recipe, somebody had to write it down. They had to figure out how to make cookies and write it down so that way you or anyone else with the recipe could do the exact same thing. Okay, so why do you think the author of this recipe put the directions there? I think the author put the directions there in order to tell us how to make those cookies. They're going to give us every step that we need to follow to make the cookies. So let's read the directions together and see if we could be able to follow those directions to make these cookies. Preheat oven to 350 degrees. Cream the butter, white sugar, brown sugar until smooth. So there it told me to mix the butter and the white sugar and the brown sugar until smooth. I could follow those directions really easily. Beat in the eggs one at a time. So then it tells me after I have mixed together the butter and the sugar, I'm going to put in the eggs one at a time. That's probably important that I only do one egg at a time. Then stir in the vanilla. So then I'm going to pour in the vanilla. I could follow that direction too. Dissolve baking soda in hot water. Add to the batter along with the salt. Stir in flour, chocolate chips, and nuts. Drop by large spoonfuls onto ungreased pans. So it's telling me there that I stir and mix everything together, and then I put it large spoonfuls onto a pan. What do you think the next step is going to be? I think we're going to have to put it in the oven. Step 3, bake for about 10 minutes in the preheated oven or until the edges are nicely browned. So that recipe told me exactly what I needed to do in order to bake these cookies. I had to follow directions step by step. So what do you think the author's purpose of this recipe was? I'll give you just a second to think. If you said that the author's purpose was to explain how to bake cookies, you are exactly right. The author told us every step that we needed to follow in order to bake these chocolate chip cookies. Right, boys and girls, in the rest of this lesson, you are going to learn more about when authors write to explain, and you're going to do lots of practice with it. I know that you're going to do an excellent job. We will see you soon, boys and girls. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.